So, hello and welcome back yet again to another evening with Alice, where I'm in short sleeves again. That's worth 20 cents, maybe even 30. I don't know. Made me happy though. I spent the day out in my garden, which is nothing like Alice's garden because I have not heard any words from any of my flowers or insects, thankfully. Although I do say words to a lot of the insects that are out in my garden, they're not nice words though. They tend to be a little bit on the why are you biting me and why won't you just die thing. But yeah, I hope everybody is doing really, really well. Speaking of insects, there was just one on my leg, so I will be right back. Okay, took care of that. Probably the biggest drawback of living in the woods is bugs, especially the creepy crawly kind. And being out in the garden and then taking a walk in the woods definitely leads to bugs sometimes. And again, unlike Alice, these bugs don't talk. Although that one probably would have screamed as it got flushed down the toilet. Anyway, I hope you guys are doing good, and I hope you are looking forward to the next chapter. I brought visual aids this time, although I'm only going off of what the title of the chapter is, and I don't have an African lion, but it's called The Lion and the Unicorn. Oh, yeah, my brain. It's absolutely fantastic. Honestly, it is. I'm going to put the unicorn over in the... I don't know what kind of a tree this is. It's either a money tree or a rubber tree or... I don't know. It's older than I am, though. Anyway, enough of all that. That is not why you guys are here. You guys are here to hear what happens in Through the Looking Glass by Lewis Carroll, with a probably a little bit shorter chapter, although who knows, I'm not good at estimating times on anything. But we are going to be reading Chapter 7, The Lion and the Unicorn. The next moment, soldiers came running through the wood, at first in twos and threes, then 10 or 20 together, and at last in such crowds that they seemed to fill the whole forest. Alice got behind a tree for fear of being run over and watched as they went by. She thought that in all her life she had never seen soldiers so uncertain on their feet. They were always tripping over something or other, and whenever one went down, several more always fell over on him, so that the ground was soon covered in little heaps of men. Then came the horses. Having 4 feet, these managed rather better than the foot soldiers, but even they stumbled now and then, and it seemed to be a regular rule that whenever a horse stumbled, the rider fell off instantly. The confusion got worse every moment, and Alice was very glad to get out of the wood into an open place where she found the White King seated on the ground, busily writing in his memorandum book. "I've sent them all," the king cried in a tone of delight upon seeing Alice. "Did you happen to meet any soldiers, my dear, as you came through the wood?" "Yes, I did," said Alice. "Several thousand, I should think." 4,207. That's the exact number," said the king, referring to his book. "I couldn't send all the horses, you know, because 2 of them are wanted in the game. And I haven't sent the 2 messengers either. They've both gone to town. Just look along the road and tell me if you see either of them." "I see nobody on the road," said Alice. "I only wish I had such eyes," the king remarked in a fretful tone, "to be able to see nobody, and at that distance, too. Why, it's as much as I can do to see real people in this light." All of this was lost on Alice, who was still looking intently along the road, shading her eyes with one hand. "I see somebody now," she said, But he's coming very slowly, and what curious attitudes he goes into. For the messenger kept skipping up and down, wriggling like an eel as he came along, with his great hands spread out like fans to each side. Not at all, said the king. He's an Anglo-Saxon messenger, and those are Anglo-Saxon attitudes. He only does them when he's happy. His name is Hyga. He pronounced this so as to rhyme with mayor. So his name is Haga. I love my love with an H, Alice could not help beginning, because he is happy. I hate him with an H, because he is hideous. I feed him with ham sandwiches and hay. His name is Haga, and he lives on the hill, the king remarked simply, without the least idea that he was joining in the game, while Alice was still hesitating for the name of a town that began with an H. The other messenger is called Hata. I must have two, you know, to come and to go, one to come and one to go. I beg your pardon, said Alice. It's not respectable to beg, said the king. I only meant that I didn't understand, said Alice. Why one to come and one to go? Didn't I tell you, said the king. I must have two, to fetch and carry, one to fetch and one to carry. At that moment the messenger arrived. He was far too much out of breath to say a word, and could only wave his hands about and make the most fearful faces at the poor king. This lady loves you with an H, the king said, introducing Alice, in the hope of turning off the messenger's attention from himself, but it was of no use. The Anglo-Saxon attitudes only got more extraordinary every moment, while the great eyes rolled wildly from side to side. And we have a picture of all the king's horses and all the king's men. You alarm me, said the king. I feel faint. Give me a ham sandwich. On which the messenger, to Alice's great amusement, opened a bag that hung around his neck and hauled a sandwich to the king, who greedily devoured it. Another sandwich, said the king. There's nothing left but hay now, said the messenger, looking into the bag. Hay, then, the king murmured. Alice was glad to see that it revived him a good deal. There's nothing like eating hay when you're faint, he remarked to her as he munched. I should think throwing cold water over you would be better, said Alice. Or some sal volatile? I didn't say there was nothing better, the king replied. I said there was nothing like it. Which Alice did not venture to deny. Who did you pass on the road? The king went on, holding out his hand to the messenger for some more hay. Nobody, said the messenger. Quite right, the king said. This young lady saw him too, so of course nobody walks slower than you. I do my best, said the messenger in a sullen tone. I'm sure nobody walks much faster than I do. He can't do that, said the king, or else he had been here first. However, now you've got your breath, you may tell us what's happened in the town. I'll whisper it, said the messenger, putting his hands to his mouth in the shape of a trumpet and stooping so as to get close to the king's ear. Alice was sorry for this, as she wanted to hear the news too. However, instead of whispering, he simply shouted at the top of his voice, They're at it again! Do you call that a whisper? Cried the poor king, jumping up and shaking himself. If you do such a thing again, I'll have you buttered. It went through and through my head like an earthquake. It would have to be a tiny earthquake, thought Alice. Who are at it again? She ventured to ask out loud. Why, the lion and the unicorn, of course, said the king. Fighting for the crown? Yes, to be sure, said the king. And the best of the joke is that it's my crown all the while. Let's run and see them. And they trotted off, Alice repeating to herself as she ran the words of the old song. The lion and the unicorn were fighting for the crown. The lion beat the unicorn all around the town. Some gave them white bread, some gave them brown, some gave them plum cake and drummed them out of town. Does the one who wins get the crown? She asked as well as she could, for the run was putting her quite out of breath. Dear me, no, said the king. What an idea! Would you be good enough, Alice panted out, to stop a moment just to get one's breath again? I'm good enough, said the king, only I'm not strong enough. You see, a minute goes by so fearfully quick. You might as well try to stop a bandersnatch. Alice had no more breath for talking, so they trotted on in silence till they came to the sight of a great crowd, in the middle of which the lion and unicorn were fighting. They were in such a cloud of dust that at first Alice could not make out which was which, but she soon managed to distinguish the unicorn by his horn. They placed themselves close to where Hata, the other messenger, was standing and watching the fight with a cup of tea in one hand and a piece of bread and butter in the other. He's only just out of prison, and he hadn't finished his tea when he was sent in, Haga whispered to Alice. And they only give them oyster shells in there, so you see he's pretty hungry and thirsty. How are you, dear child? He went on, putting his arm affectionately around Hata's neck. Hata looked around and nodded and went on with his bread and butter. Were you happy in prison, dear child? Said Haga. Hata looked around once more, and this time a tear or two trickled down his cheek, but not a word would he say. Speak, can't you? Haga cried impatiently. But Hata only munched away, drinking some more tea. Speak, won't you? Cried the king. How are they getting on with the fight? Hata made a desperate effort and swallowed a large piece of bread and butter. They're getting on very well, he said in a choking voice. Each of them has been down about 87 times. Then I suppose they'll soon bring the white bread and the brown, said Alice. It's waiting for 'em now, said Hata. This is a bit of it that I'm eating. There was a pause in the fight just then, and the lion and the unicorn sat down panting while the king called out, 10 minutes allowed for refreshments. Haga and Hata set to work at once, carrying around trays of white and brown bread. Alice took a piece to taste, but it was very dry. I don't think they'll fight any more today, the king said to Hata. Go and order the drums to begin. And Hata went bounding off like a grasshopper. For a minute or two, Alice stood silent, watching him. Then she brightened up. Look, she cried, pointing eagerly. There's the White Queen running across the country. She came flying out of the wood over yonder. How fast those queens can run! There's some enemy after her, no doubt, said the king without even looking up. The wood's full of 'em. But aren't you going to run and help her? Alice asked, quite surprised at his taking it so quietly. No use at all, said the king. She runs so fearfully quick, you might as well try to catch a bandersnatch, but I'll make a memorandum about her if you like. She's a dear good creature, he said to himself, as he opened up his book. Do you spell creature with a double E? At this moment, the unicorn sauntered by them with his hands in his pockets. Okay, I've never met a unicorn that has hands or pockets, but we'll roll with it. At this moment, the unicorn sauntered by them with his hands in his pockets. I had the best of it this time, he said to the king, glancing as he passed. A little, said the king nervously. You shouldn't have run him through with your horn, though, you know. It didn't hurt him, said the unicorn. And he was going on when his eye happened to fall upon Alice. He turned around instantly and stood for some time looking at her with an air of deep disgust. What is this? He said at last. This is a child, Haga replied eagerly, coming in front of Alice to introduce her, and spreading out both of his hands towards her in an Anglo-Saxon attitude. We only found it today. It's large as life and twice as natural. And we have two pictures, and I'm not sure what either of them really are. We have, I do believe, the king and Alice, but I didn't picture the messengers as rabbits. And we have a little tea party. I always thought that they were fabulous monsters, said the unicorn. Is it alive? It can talk, said Hagia. The unicorn looked dreamily at Alice and said, Talk, child. Alice could not help her lips curling up into a smile as she began. Do you know, I always thought unicorns were fabulous monsters too. I never saw one alive before. Well, now that we have seen each other, said the unicorn, if you'll believe in me, I'll believe in you. Is that a bargain? Yes, if you like. Come, fetch out the plum cake, old man, said the unicorn, turning from Alice to the king. None of your brown bread for me. Certainly, certainly, the king muttered, and beckoned to Hagia. Open the bag, he whispered. Quick, not that one, that's full of hay. Hagia took a large cake out of the bag and gave it to Alice to hold while he got out a dish and a carving knife. How they all came out of the bag, Alice couldn't guess. It was just like a conjuring trick, she thought. The lion had joined them while this was going on. He looked very tired and sleepy, and his eyes were half shut. What's this? He said, blinking lazily at Alice and speaking in a deep, hollow tone that sounded like the tolling of a great bell. Ah, what is it now? The unicorn cried. You'll never guess. I couldn't. The lion looked at Alice wearily. Are you an animal, a vegetable, or a mineral? He said, yawning every other word. It's a fabulous monster, the unicorn cried out before Alice could say a word. Then hand round the plum cake, monster, the unicorn said, lying down and putting his chin on his paws. And sit down, both of you, he said to the king and the unicorn. Fair play with the cake, you know. The king was evidently very uncomfortable at having to sit down between the two great creatures, but there was no other place for him. What a fight we might have for the crown now, said the unicorn, looking shyly at the crown, which the poor king was almost shaking off of his head, he was trembling so much. I'd win it easy. I'm not so sure of that, said the unicorn. Why, beat you all around town, you chicken, the lion replied, almost getting up as he spoke. Here the king interrupted to prevent the quarrel from going on. He was very nervous and his voice was a little quivery. All around the town? He said. That's a good long way. Did you go by the bridge or the marketplace? You'll get the best view by the old bridge. I'm sure I don't know, the king growled out as he lay down again. There's too much dust to see anything. What a time the monster is having cutting up the cake! Alice had seated herself on the bank of a little brook with the great dish on her knees and was sawing away diligently with the knife. It's very provoking, she said in reply to the lion. She was starting to get used to being called the monster. I've cut several slices already, but they always join together again. And we have another picture of the lion, the unicorn, Alice, and the cake. You don't know how to manage looking-glass cakes, said the unicorn. Hand it around first and cut it after. This sounded like nonsense, but Alice very obediently got up and carried the dish around, and the cake divided itself into 3 pieces. Now cut it up, said the lion as she returned to her place with the empty dish. I say, this isn't fair, said the unicorn as Alice sat with the knife in her hand, quite puzzled as to how to begin. The monster has given the lion twice as much as me. She kept none for herself, anyhow, said the lion. Do you like plum cake, monster? But before Alice could answer, the drums began. Where the noise came from, she couldn't make out. The air seemed full of it, and it rang through and through her head until she felt quite deafened. She jumped to her feet and sprang across the little brook in terror, and had just time to see the lion and the unicorn raise to their feet with angry looks at being interrupted in their feast before Alice dropped to her knees, put her hands over her ears, vainly trying to shut out the dreadful noise. If that doesn't drum them out of town, she thought, nothing ever will. And that is the end of the chapter, but we do have a picture. And yeah, that is the end of the chapter. Another weird one. I guess I'm just going to have to just accept the fact that they're all kind of nonsensical. Although I was happy that I actually recognized and didn't realize it came from Alice in Wonderland, that whole I'll believe in you if you believe in me thing that Alice was saying to the unicorn. I've heard people say that before and never knew it was from Alice in Wonderland. I did know that the We're All Mad Here was from Alice in Wonderland, but never knew that the other one was. So, very cool. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. I hope that you enjoyed these last few chapters. A little bit better than eating baby clams. That's for sure. Anyway, please do hit the thumbs up on your way out. It does always make me smile, and I will see you tomorrow.